Modigliated.
Modigliani.
Can you hear me calling? Modigliani. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, brother. Back once again in the
Modigliate Space.
correct. That is correct. Back in
Correctamundo.
the
Back in the old womb of Wig. You know what I'm saying? Just wigging out.
Dude, back in the old meat cavern. You know what I'm
The
saying?
meat cavern, the meat cocoon.
Dude, the old flapper.
Basting myself in flex strippings.
Just spooning the sweet garlicky oil onto my, anointing myself with.
Bathing in a mirepoix of homegrown vegetables.
A veritable beurre de blanc.
Beurre de blanc.
Dude, so let's talk about freaky shit today. Let's talk about
Let's don the tinfoil hat.
Dude, let me get my erstwhile tinfoil hat. All right, so check this out. I first thing on my mind is like I would talk about United States stuff, but I feel like it's so common in the news. What about, have you been following the China situation at all?
I've been following the food security in third world like countries situation more than I have that. But I heard from Do Buddy Jeff about that whole thing where they think that the coronavirus might have leaked out of like a test lab. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I mean that's I don't know. This is such an interesting thing to like, if it was like a bioweapon that leaked or something, or just an experiment gone wrong or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was talking about is that China kicked like all of like, maybe not all, but I think most of the American journalists out of the country. And they are either threatening to or have made it illegal for people to play online video games, and they're gonna start like really putting broader measures on clamping down on the internet. And I don't know, man. You know, the Uyghur Muslim situation. Every time I talk about it, I feel like there's gonna like some fucking surveillance drone is just gonna like dude, just
over here.
You know what I'm saying? You know, but like, I don't know. I feel like tinfoil hat shit, you know, the conspiracy, there could be some crazy conspiracy around the coronavirus, but I think the more tinfoil hatty thing is that any government with like authoritarian leanings is just, dude, just dripping saliva, just wet. They're just wet, dude. They're so stoked. And it's just, I don't know.
And not even like authoritarian countries, but factions within any country that are like authoritarian leaning are all just like, you know, just getting super juiced about it. So I mean, that's a crazy situation. Like I can't imagine living in an environment where I like have that level of fear around kind of like voicing my thoughts, you know, in a public sense.
Terrifying.
And yeah, it really is. I mean, what I've been kind of tinfoil hatting about is the food security situation, because we're about to like we've been in quarantine long enough for crops, you know, agricultural cycles to have like started to shift and stuff. And it's like everyone's like able to get food right now, but that relies on people growing food. And I've, you know, read so much stuff about, you know, people having to bury massive crops of potatoes in like the Midwest and stuff like that, because like all the infrastructure is so fucked up, like they can't get things to market.
Wow.
And you know what I mean? And like, so it's like things are weird now, but like imagine if there's like an actual famine. Like that's you know, I feel like that's kind of in the tinfoil hat realm, but like definitely closer to that than I've ever actually felt as, you know, an individual growing up in the 21st century, you know.
Yeah,
So
I was looking at that recently. Just the food situation in the States. I came across an article that was like, there's like a giant desert starting somewhere in the middle of the United States. And I was just thinking, like, whoa, what's it going to be like? Totally tangent. This is going to jump around a lot.
let's do it. Let's dive. Let's slip and
Totally,
slide.
you know what I'm saying? Totally
Yeah.
tangential, but like, imagine what's going to happen. I thought about this, talking about this with my partner yesterday, Karen. And like, imagine what's going to happen when like a giant desert just opens up across the middle of the United States, like Dust Bowl style. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And just like the middle of the United States becomes like the fucking Sahara. And then, you know, it's going to happen. We're going to have to use weather control. And then there's going to be a global battle for like how to control the weather.
Let me go a little more deep down the rabbit hole, Mulder. I imagine when that happens, the kind of like political destabilization, it'll open up. We'll have situations essentially like what the Middle East experiences with like radicalized Islam, with fundamentalist Christianity. So you're going to have like,
Definitely.
you're going to have some like real, like
Waco shit,
redneck bubbas, like Fedayeen war crying, driving their like F-250s across like Kansas.
Dude.
That's something that I think about a lot, because those kind of elements exist in America. I think a lot more than anyone wants to like
any
kind of
other
like
place.
admit. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, the militia mindset
and it really is
pervasive.
And the kind of like religiously charged militia kind of thing. It's I know what that is, like you see it in places like Syria, just, with another religion. But
so is this it, or is it all? Are we destabilizing towards an imminent global economic collapse? What do you think? Are we in the are we at the taint of the end times, as it were?
About to hit the brown, if you will.
You know what I'm saying?
I think
crawling toward the puckered hole of
scuttling. I don't think so. I think the accumulated wealth and power that has been kind of aggregated over the last 60 years, that we'll have the resources to solve almost any kind of problem. And we're in a space where like political systems are going to shift, or have the ability to shift radically quickly.
Yeah.
But I think that we've already figured out enough things, and that wealth, if anything happened towards some kind of like wealth redistribution with like corporations and things, like everyone's going to have clean drinking water, everyone's going to not be starving. I think we're on the cusp. This is something I think about a lot, tinfoil hat on, is just how like, you ever look at like large scale agriculture, in like the Midwest, where you see these like massive tractors that are like, like 50, have things going 50 yards across, just like mowing corn or whatever. That when is that going to be automated and done by drones? Like there's so many things, dude. It's within the next 10 years. Yeah. Everyone talks about like the trucking industry, but I think that those kinds of technologies, the ones that produce food, are going to be, like the whole like no one's going to use migrant workers for agricultural crops in like 15, 20 years in America, I think.
Totally. And cool too. I mean, honestly, like there's not a huge, I mean, you get into the quagmire of the irrigation discussion, or the irrigation. These damn irrigants. The immigration situation pretty quick, but like, I don't know. I think it's kind of dope. I'm excited to see more jobs replaced by robots. But what stresses me, me and Peter talked about this on the old Dude Buddies podcast. Tune in.
Plug
in Dude Buddies podcast. The other day we were talking about the fact that it's going to be really weird people are going to have to look for weird, different ways to find meaning once work is kind of, you're bereft of the ability to work 30 to 40 hours a week. There's a lot of people out there that I just don't think would be able to mentally handle having that much kind of free time, unless, you know, the thing that scares me is like, what when we see the automation come in, are we gonna give people a bunch of mental health services? Are we going to figure out ways to have a mental social safety net? Or are we going to put Netflix on discount? And are we going to, you know, like, not unlike
medicate the society through like technological means or chemical means?
Not unlike porn about 7 years ago, when just it miraculously all became free, which I've always been deeply suspicious of. I'm like what? Why is porn free now? What happened?
Yeah.
Porn just became free one day. They're gonna do that same shit with like television, man. They're just gonna be like, oh yeah, Hulu, Netflix, Apple Pay. It's like 50 cents a month. It's all good.
I mean, let's not even talk about like internet connections, like Wi-Fi service. Like, you know, I think especially with this crisis, like that's proven itself to be far more of like a utility than like some kind of luxury or, you know, privilege technology.
Yeah, it's just changing everything, dog. What else? What's more tinfoil stuff you think?
Oh man. Well, let's talk about.
Is it 5G?
Well, here let's get real tinfoil and talk about how most governments are way more invested with the presentation of like authority and power in situations rather than actually having a good grip on things. Like, that's something I think about a lot, is like, you know, could this COVID thing be way less of a big deal than it, you know, we're kind of told that it is, because people in power just don't want to be held responsible in a way where like people can like point to them and be like, they're responsible for human life. Because that level of like litigious, you know, that starts the whole litigious engine within the United States in this crazy way. And so I think, yeah, what are people telling us too conservative information or to kind of like
it's a really
liberal
good question. It's a really good question. You know, I watched this conspiracy theory video. It was the only one I watched the whole pandemic, but this guy was just so, I don't know, he just had a real vibe. And his credentials were ridiculous. Like, he was like, I graduated from this, and I've got this many degrees, and I've done this, and I've written all these books. And like, I was like, all right, what's this guy got to say? And he was like, his whole flex was like, they're just spinning you this tale that this thing is like so gnarly and it's killing all these people and we should be worried about it because they want to consolidate global power. And it was interesting to me because like he referenced a bunch of times where people have died like this before, where there's been pandemics, like literally pandemics just like this, where like more people have died. But the thing that I always think when those kind of conversations happen, or when people are having theories that like that everybody's getting together and like trying to increase the authoritarian presence in the world by doing this or doing that, I'm like, man, you people, I think, really overestimate how much governments communicate with each other.
Absolutely. You know, like, and how much they actually control, you know.
Yeah. Titans of industry, I think, are probably controlling things at a scale like at a micro scale. I like pharmaceutical, you know, tobacco, oil, like when the money is like so large that it's now figurative, like those people are controlling things at a pretty granular level, I think. But like
and I think they're probably controlling things at a deeper time scale as well, because like, you know, you think about the rollout of kind of key products in the United States, which is like automobiles, phones, you know, things, you know, maybe not that we're producing, but that we're consuming and are part of like our economic life. And when you start to think about that, it's like people are definitely having a, you know, 10-year time scale when they're thinking about unleashing a technology, you know, or a 20-year time scale. And I think that's something where it's like people are probably already designing the artifacts of 30 years from now today, you know.
Oh,
And that's an interesting thought, because that's like on a generational cycle, and that's something that you see in like China built in kind of culturally and politically, you know, like intergenerational businesses, and you know, things like that, where there's like they're more grouped around these long form schemes, you know, not in like a negative, you know, just plans, you know. And I think that kind of thinking is ultimately going to weigh out against the kind of like American, like crackhead business vision, you know, where people kind of don't really think too far beyond the next thing,
just so,
you know.
it's so interesting to think, like, with China, you know, what keeps a country like China from being like a superpower, which they, I mean, they are, I mean, technically, right, they are, but also technically they're kind of weirdly not, because hella people die from like starvation and just like bullshit, you know, like just bullshit third world
bullshit
country
infrastructure
shit. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I always come back to this idea that like it's because they like you can't get to a certain status without it becoming very uncommon that a person dies in your country for a stupid reason that was not their own choice. Like, it's very difficult to die of starvation in the United States. And I think that's like that's a reason why people, it's like, whoa, we've eliminated a lot of the bottom of the barrel causes of death in this country. And people can talk shit all they want, you know, it's like, but dude, for a country of almost 400 million people, it's a pretty big accomplishment to have all of those people not like taken care of. There's a ton of disenfranchised people in our country, but like, you're probably not going to die unless you are working towards it, or unless you're in a bullshit situation like you're a black person and the cops, you know, it's just shit like that. There's still outliers, but for the most part, you know, you look at a country like China and it's like, I don't know, like when are they gonna rise up? Probably when like more than half of them are just taken care of in a basic way. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's an ignorant thing to think, but
well, I mean, I think that the advances of technology in the last 20 years definitely like level the playing field as far as like what you can really expect of a country's kind of trajectory as a you know, developing political, you know, social entity.
totally.
Because like I look, you know, maybe I have like a slightly outlier. I mean, this is more of like a hope maybe that I'd have, is that like places that haven't developed to a, you know, to the level that like the United States are at, there's a trickle down from like technological development that enriches their lives and opens up connection to where they don't have to go through the bullshit of like resource exploitation. They're already like woke to these things that other people have done and are like, oh, we don't need to, you know, just build all this stupid infrastructure when we can all communicate digitally, and we can stay on a level that like maybe looks as agrarian or like simple as, you know, it looks now, but everyone is food secure. Everyone is like able to learn, you know, through digital means, you know, and get an education, you know, even if you're in the, you know, middle of like Central Africa, you know, or something like that, that you're like plugged in to have opportunity and not to like face scarcity. And I think that, you know, the only thing in the way of that is human evil. Like when you look at the way that people behave, like
just wealth,
that's the only thing.
Yeah, I agree. I was on a real tirade a couple of days ago about like, dude, like kill the ultra wealthy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like when money is figurative, like has figurative value to you, it's time to stop. You know, like money is not trading cards. Like when money becomes I was having this conversation with a friend of mine too, where it was like, we made a big mistake when we made the same thing that is a proxy for power, the thing that we trade for food. Like it creates like a weird, like those two things shouldn't be the same thing, right? But I mean, in a weird functional way, it makes sense the way that the whole kind of system was born out of like certainly, you know, food surplus, that, you know, power kind of equals the ability to buy food. But man, we just got such a dastardly situation where you got people that have billions of dollars, and it's like, dude, like, can we just give you some other quotient of power, and you can give the $1 billion that could feed the rest of the world to people that could just feed the rest of the world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, can't we just call you like a fucking king? You want like a fiefdom or something like that?
Yeah.
Like, stop
Let me
keeping
get you a
all
little
of this.
crown.
Dude, what do you need? You know what I
You
mean?
can
Like,
wear a crown.
dude, yeah, you can
You can do
wear
that.
a crown. We will call you whatever you want.
My
Just give that,
liege.
dude. Just give that money to people who need it, Bezos or
Yeah.
whoever the fuck, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
It's
Or you know, not money, but just start like seeding. You know, like give everyone some kind of phone. Like I think
that would
that's
shift a
something.
lot of shit, man.
It would shift a lot of things, and you know, to have a internet access that's like global
That'll happen soon.
and you know, free.
Yeah,
I think it will.
I
I think it will.
think that'll happen soon.
But who knows, man? With this whole COVID thing, I think it's, you know, it's making people a lot more aware of certain realities in life that are ancient. You know, so many people are talking about gardening, where I'm just like, man, like you're the last person I'd expect to like want to start growing your own food. And, you know, I think that's a really, you know, positive response to situations like this, is to like really start to look at the way that you can engage and like disengage and be self-sufficient from systems. Because like, you know, this is the kind of situation where you just see kind of how systems that we rely on are just a lot flimsier than we probably ever wanted to admit.
100%. Well, it's funny because I mean, I've always kind of had that sense in a weird way. You go to the grocery store and you're like, there's just too much stuff here. There's too much, like something's gonna get in the way of you having this many options. It's not normal. But you know, the funny thing too, you said like after COVID, I was just talking to someone the other day. I'm like, bro, you gonna fucking shake hands with people like just straight raw dog handshakes? Fuck no, dude. I was thinking, I was like, dude, people are gonna get so many hard fucking no's from me, where it's just like, I'm not gonna shake your fucking hand. I don't know you. I don't know where you've been. I don't know who you talked to. I don't know what you touched last. Like, dude, like handshakes and hugs are gonna be like weirdly akin to like sexual partners. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna be looking at people like,
it's gonna define your circle a lot more realistically.
Oh yeah, the people that you're willing to actually have
share
physical touch
physical space with.
Whoa.
Yeah, man. And like I think a lot about how people are just going to be so primed to wig out about, like, you know, whenever the cold comes around, whenever someone in their office fucking is out sick, people are just going to be like, you know, just totally bugging. and it's going to, you know, it'll change the way that people do business. Like I just, like, honestly kind of can't imagine restaurants existing without changing mostly to delivery or like window service, and like maybe fine dining being kind of like a very specific thing that people do, you know, niche thing. And that always blows my mind, you know, like
you know what? I said this the other day on the Dude Buddies podcast, and I wonder what your opinion is, because Peter had a little bit of a kickback, but I find it so interesting that restaurants are considered an essential service, because that means that our population has been infantilized to the point where somebody else, where somebody else cooking your food is a potentially life-saving situation. As in, we trust people so little to be able to cook food for themselves that it is an essential life-saving service, not to go to the grocery store, but to go to a restaurant to get takeout. It just blows my mind. I mean, look, I love takeout. No shade to people. Well, a little bit of shade to people who don't know how to cook for themselves. It's a little pathetic. But
it's 2020, like recipe.com.
I just feel like, don't you feel so helpless? Like you really, like literally you have to eat out every meal. Like it just kind of blows my mind. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Peter's argument was like, well, food is like the kind of cultural center point, and like so many traditions are passed on through food and blah blah blah. And I was just like, I don't know, man.
At
Like
home. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I was like, I feel you, but at the same time, like, learn how to fucking cook for yourself. That's ridiculous.
Seriously.
Like, in a weird
Yeah.
way, I wouldn't be super sad to see a ton of restaurants close. Like,
Yeah.
the human cost to it is tremendous, and there's no kind of sugarcoating that. That's terrible. Like, a bunch of people lose their jobs. People love cooking food with all their heart. They put their heart and soul into food.
I think the people that do love to cook will always be able to make a living doing that, though.
I think you're
in a way that I think
right.
is probably way more on their own terms and enjoyable and true to the craft. You know, that's something, honestly, as this has happened, I've thought about doing, is like, man, I should just get like a double burner and some woks and just start cooking stuff, because like I love to cook. I think I know how to cook well. And
you should.
Yeah, you know, it's it's a service, though. It's not a necessity. It's not an essential thing.
Yeah,
it should be something that's reserved for auspicious occasions.
And it's like, on our, to cap this off, and then maybe we can start wrapping up. The whole thing about eating out that kind of wrinkles me is that, like, I love Thai food. We had Thai food last night. It was the first time that we had food from the outside in like a month and a half. Yeah. And I just like, I lapped it up. But when you eat food out, unless you have a lot of money, the trade-off you're paying is that they're using shitty ingredients. Absolutely. Even if they're using pretty good ingredients, in comparison to what you can buy for yourself and cook for yourself, it's crap. It's usually shitty oil. It's usually shitty vegetables. It's usually shitty, like, fucked up, that animal is treated like
any
shit
kind
meat.
of like lunch meat or kind of processed meat of any kind. It's like,
the bottom of the barrel stuff. They're feeding you
really
whatever they can to save costs usually. And then if it's a place that is reputable, where they get all their shit from a great place, it's like a $15 fucking sandwich or something crazy like that. And so it's like,
one of the things this whole, we were labbing about this earlier, is just how cheap we've been living since this has happened. When you're actually cooking for yourself in a sustained kind of like focused way, you realize just like it shouldn't be a daunting thing for people. And I think it's something that cripples, like you said, that kind of infantilizes people to be really reliant on weird shit.
Weird shit, man. I'm happy to see people in this pandemic becoming less, like, being forced to be less reliant on just kind of things that you don't really need. Like, it's not a necessity. Like, you don't need to go buy, and that's like, my bank account doesn't go down anymore because I don't go out, and I'm not nickel and diming myself for all these little treats that I think I need, and I'm not going out to eat every couple of days, and it feels fucking good, man. Like, I haven't bought a coffee
in a month, and it's great. It's really great. I've learned a lot, and I'm also really thankful about having lived like a rural life before, where like I know where food comes from. Like I know I've hunted and fished as a kid, and have been on farms and things, and there's just a lot of those skills that, like, in times like these, I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad I just kind of like got this by osmosis, and definitely an empowering place to be.
Hopefully skills we don't have to use, but if it all does go to hell, all you hunters, fishers, and chill people, hit us up at Modigliate Space.
Modigliate Space.
We'll see if we can fit you into a slot on the tribe.
Let's trade our ancestral tool technology, and Modigliate into a higher realm.
You know what I'm saying? Hit that next valence shell of sweet karmic blessing. All right, buddy. Well, we've completed another half turn around the old clock, and
meat walnut
dropped into old tinfoil space. If you're watching this out there, let us know what you thought. We're getting this thing off the ground. Love to hear your thoughts. And you know what I'm saying? Stay Modigliate, family.
Stay Modigliated.